everybody, welcome to another edition of Business in the Real World. I'm delighted today to welcome my friend, my landlord at the Milne Yard Business Centre, my investment mentor for cryptocurrency.
The list is getting bigger.
It's Kieran Lee.
Thank you.
Kieran.
Cheers, Gary.
Kieran is a director at Evolve Technologies, IT service and support company here in Peterborough.
You've learned that.
So I want to go straight in at the deep end, if I might.
Okay.
The whole world is out to get us, right?
Yeah.
So this weekend, all of our favourite brands are going to promise us that they've got deals for us that we can't get anywhere else. And we know, because there's been a report, that those products are cheaper earlier this year and they'll be cheaper again next year, right? So we're getting ripped off in all areas. As far as the threats to business are concerned, particularly from the IT perspective, of course, what's the danger out there for them right now?
So the danger right now is for smaller businesses or people starting out. Obviously, there's been a lot of new businesses start in the past few years. Is when you start a company, things are compulsory, insurance, things like that. But one thing that people tend to sidearm is sort of their IT. There's a lot of free stuff out there that you can use to start. It comes with email services such as two-factor and all them sort of things. But no one really gets any advice when they're starting that out. They sort of just think, we've got a laptop. I'm buying here, I'm selling here. That's all I need to do to make money. Well, it takes one little thing that hiccup down the line, and all of a sudden, maybe you cash your mind back and you think, I should have done this. I should have got some advice. This is where I should have started. So, we try to encourage people to come to us from day one. And, we're not talking about signing up multi-million-pound companies here. We're talking one-man bands starting out. Tick these simple boxes to stay safe, whether it be, some kind of antivirus, two-factor, patch management services. These are not expensive things. They grow with your business at the same time. So, it's all about how seriously you want to take it. It's like anything. So.
But what's the real risk? Am I really at risk of being hacked?
I think everyone is at risk to some degree. Everyone moves money. Everyone spends money. Everyone wants to make money. So if you allow yourself to become a target, I would say that everyone is a risk. But some things affect. It's very difficult because in the sort of virus and the ransomware world, IT companies and software companies, we're always behind. Everything is always coming out. It's new. There's new stuff every day. Yeah. We might get a phone call from a client saying, I've just clicked on this. What shall I do? And immediately we're there like, well, reset your password. It's clearly dodgy. Yeah. Let's reset your password. We'll delete it. We tend to grab like the domain section of it and we blacklist it to make sure it doesn't come through again. But yeah, unfortunately it's a world where we're always going to be behind, because once a particular scam has been ironed out, they won't use it again because they've got a new one. And unfortunately, we've then, like I said, it's just a continuous game of catch up.
So you mentioned ransomware. So I want to imagine that for a small business owner coming into work, turning on the PC. Suddenly there's a splash screen saying you're about to lose all your data. We're about to encrypt your hard drive unless you pay us this ransom. At that moment in time, is there anything the small business can do to save themselves?
Well, it sort of goes back to what I said. If they start out and they do have some business practices in, like, taking a backup, even if it's plugging in a USB stick, they might not have a lot of data when they start out. If they're plugging in a USB stick and keeping it separate and they're on a rotation or something like that, we would immediately say, reset all your passwords now, or if we're looking after them, we'll do it for them. Yeah. We would then probably reinstall the device that was affected. Yeah. And we always say pray for backups. You can never have too many backups. So if they're using something like a database or something like that, obviously you can't really back that up locally that easily. So if they're using like a hosted server, we can just roll back a VM. It takes 20 minutes these days with technology. So my advice: always call your IT provider straight away. Yeah. Even if you suspect something's not quite right, just call someone straight away and get it checked out.
Yeah. And what about, everyone's out and about, mobile, remote working, hybrid working nowadays. Is there a similar threat to all the mobile devices?
It's probably greater. It's a greater threat when you're out and about. However, at the same time, in the past sort of couple of years, there has been so many new VPN clients come out, and I know, you see them advertised on TV, YouTube, things like that. One that I recommend to quite a few people is Tunnel Bear. It's free. And yeah, I'd always recommend when you're out and about, do use a VPN. There's apps now for phones as well. If you're on Android or OS, even Google, all of them. Just always use a VPN when you're out and about, especially if you're using guest Wi-Fi's, public Wi-Fi's, things like that.
And back in the office, then I'm thinking about, most of us are using something like Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace or something like that. So if I'm running my company inside that kind of environment, how safe and secure is it?
Okay, so with 365 and Google, obviously, sort of touching on it earlier, most of these softwares now come with their own levels of security. You can pay for extra if you want, but they come free with two-factor things like you can pay for information protection programs, and you can pay for like encrypted emails and things like that. So if you want to encrypt every email you send it, there's little add-ons that you can get with all of these subscription plans. In terms of how secure they are, well, if you log on and you put stuff in there and you don't touch it and you don't have access to it and you remove yourself or you remove the people element out of it, it's as secure as it can be.
So the stuff that I put in Google Drive or in OneDrive and presumably somewhere in a data center, that stuff is being backed up on a regular basis. Is that enough as a small business?
Okay, so take 365 for example. They offer I think they refer to it in their T's and C's as like a reasonable endeavours backup. Right. So, you can, let's say you got hit with a ransomware attack, like you said, and we've contacted them and said, right, I want all the data back. Can you sort it out? Well, it's completely out of our hands. It's out of yours. You've got to wait for them. You've got to raise a ticket. Yeah. You don't know where that data is because they don't necessarily tell you that. You can be specific to a location, but you can't ask them about it. So, yes, they do back it up, but how good is it? We don't really know.
Have you ever experienced that with a client saying, right, I need to get this data back from Google or Microsoft?
Once or twice, yeah, and it's not actually been too bad. It's just quite a lengthy process if you've got to go through the ticketing system. So we actually sell a third-party tool, and we actually take a full copy of everyone's Google Drive and 365 and store it in our data center facilities. Okay. And then that way, if there's ever any issues, we can restore anything pretty much instantly because we have access to it ourselves, obviously. Yeah. The software we use itself does back up all files and folders for up to a year, and it backs up all emails for 7 years. So, wow. It's quite a good retention period, and it doesn't actually cost that much. So this is what I mean. People see IT as a cost, but it's not. It's definitely an investment.
So locally, I mean, let's take it right down to sort of much smaller businesses. As well as that Google, Microsoft protection, would you recommend that people have got a separate external hard drive or a USB or something, and they're doing that backup themselves?
I would always recommend. You can never have too many backups, ever. I would always recommend taking a copy of your own stuff for yourself, or asking your provider to take a copy for you, because a ransomware attack, someone could get in and say, let's say they got into your account in a May or June, they might not do anything for months and months and months and months, but it's still there. So appreciate that's not necessarily them encrypting anything or doing anything, but you don't know how long they've been sat in there watching what you're doing, who you're sending invoices to, things like that. So I would always say keep a copy of your own stuff.
Okay. Now you mentioned earlier on about people, and if we assume that the environment is as safe and secure as we can make it physically, electronically, if you like. What are the vulnerabilities that you've come across where people are involved?
All of them. Most of the issues will be always caused by an individual. They might just be having a bad day, clicked on an email link. There's always the common one about like a fake 365 login box that comes up. They type in their details. They don't realise they've done it. Right. Nothing happens immediately, but then the person's already sat there watching. And these tend to be like accounts, departments, receptionists, things like that. That's how they get in. And once they're in, they'll just sit there for as long as they need to. They'll learn, who your suppliers are, who you're paying, who you're sending invoices to. And then before you know it, they've grabbed an invoice without you realising late at night. They've put it back in and they've added their bank details instead of your suppliers. Yeah. So it's really, really common. And the client would then call us up the morning after. Oh, I've just sent 10 grand to the wrong person.
Yeah.
What can you do? Call the bank maybe and tell them, because by that point we can't do anything. But there's so many quick, easy things to prevent attacks like that.
And when things like that happen, and not just ransomware we talked about, and that kind of attack, and the sense that somebody's out there watching, is there any mechanism for just kind of cleansing a system so that you can go, nothing's happened on my system, but I'd just like to know if anybody's watching? Is that even feasible?
So if they're already there, it's very difficult to know they're there until they've done something. Right. But in terms of staying completely protected all the time, no people involved.
Sack everybody.
Sack everybody. Yeah. Obviously, that's not reasonable. But what you can do is, if you have got members of staff and clients potentially that you're concerned about, there's also lots of training out there. Right. So we can set up software which basically we will pretend to be the hacker, and we will basically set ourselves up from an IT point on 365 or Google Drive. We install our software in there, and we send out spam emails to your staff as is. Right. And the software will then monitor who's clicking on it, which member of staff clicks on it, which member of staff forwards, links, things like that. And then we can go back to the client after running it for about 4 to 6 weeks and say, right, these are the users that you've potentially got to educate a bit here. Yeah. And then we can offer training and things like that. And it's definitely an eye-opener for a lot of companies.
And is there any sense that as artificial intelligence and things like that start to get better, are they able to explore the system more effectively, or notice that something out of the ordinary has happened?
That's a good question. Not that we're aware of at the minute, but I'm sure at some point someone's going to, it changes every day. New things come out in technology every minute. There's probably about 10 things being created right now as we're having this conversation. Yeah. So at the minute, there's not anything I'm aware of, but I know it will be coming, definitely.
What do you think then, just generally, will be the biggest shift in IT? I mean, we've seen this kind of exodus out to the kitchen table and people working remotely. Is there anything else coming in IT that we should be aware of?
Who knows? If you'd have asked me that 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to answer them. When I started out in IT, you'd even buy licenses. You'd buy a license and that's it, you own it. Well, obviously now everything's subscription based. It's so easy to pick things up these days. Pricing wise, back in the day, if something went faulty or there was a faulty component, you'd replace it. It's actually cheaper now just to buy new hardware. Right. I can't answer that because it just changes too rapidly.
But you know how when, 10 years ago, we wouldn't have imagined that we'd have been touching our computers or talking to our computers or something like that. Is there something coming along that sort of lines? Do you think it'll change?
I don't know. I've always had a very strange theory that there'll be something that's planted in your head and all of a sudden you don't need to touch or do anything because you just think it and it happens. And
I look forward to that.
Yeah, well, I think I've said to you in the past when we've had chats, I've always said that if you want to be a multimillionaire and make loads of money, all you've got to do is come up with a way to make someone lazier. Right. And that is a technology or something like that. But if you can give someone 5-10 seconds of their day back, they'll buy it. The TV remote, it started out as you'd get up off your sofa and you'd go change the channel. Then all of a sudden it was a bit of plastic on the end of a cable. Then all of a sudden it's infrared. Do you know what I mean? You're just making someone slightly lazier. So someone's going to make something where they can just sit there. The person can just sit there and think it, and then it's done.
Yeah. I mean, virtual reality's got a lot of press at the moment, but it's more for sort of entertainment and games and stuff. Any role for that in business? All of us sitting here with our virtual reality headsets on.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me dizzy, but at the minute, I can't think of a way you could apply that in business, but obviously some people use it as a business. You go down the supermarket now and in shopping centres and stuff, sometimes over Christmas they have like the racing simulators and things like that, the F1 simulators. So it's getting a lot of press and it is massive, and the kids are loving it and things. So I used to go out and play football when I was a kid because there was no iPads. Now my daughter just sits on her iPad. So.
You're not that old.
Yeah.
I think augmented reality is going to be quite interesting because this idea that you can, I've seen it in the aviation world where I came from, where you can put on a headset and you can be looking at an aircraft and there's a fault with it, and then suddenly you'll get the technical manual will pop up, and because it's augmented reality, you can get pointers and indicators of which bit to remove and which bit to replace and things like that. So I can see something like that.
Yeah, training wise, I mean, I can see it probably potentially being quite big there, because with the reality stuff, obviously you can simulate anything.
Yeah.
So at the minute, for example, if you're, I'm probably over exaggerating here, but if you're training to be a doctor or something like that, you know, it'd be one intense game of operation when you put a reality headset on. So yeah, no, definitely in the training world, I can see some bonuses there. I mean, we're probably giving someone on the internet the idea now when we should be sitting quietly.
No, I'm sure they're thinking about that sort of stuff.
But yeah, definitely down the line.
Yeah. So we've covered the dangers. We've covered the kind of systems that people are normally using, Workspace and 365 and stuff like that. We've talked about physical protection. We've talked about the people and the vulnerabilities that they bring into the system. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about what's happening in IT at the moment?
I mean, like I said, besides the fact that it changes on a sort of daily basis, but sort of from an evolved technology standpoint, we go to networking events and things like that, and we always tout about security and backups. I mean, I go on about backups all the time. And one thing I'd always say is, even if you're not a client of ours, if you know us and you trust us, send us anything that looks out of the ordinary, and we'll check it first. Yeah. It's just so much easier. Just forward us an email that you think is suspicious and get us to say yes or no, as opposed to sort of rolling the dice yourself. So I'd rather help before something's happened than try and help when it's already gone very badly. So, but that's it, really.
Oh, good. Well, look, a quick dance through all the different things that are happening in IT. I really appreciate your time today. Thanks, Kieran.
Thanks, Gav.
And I'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.